today. Really excited
Yeah.
about this chat.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for meeting me today. I'm in preparation for this chat today. It gave me the opportunity to reflect a bit more intentionally about working with men and men's mental health. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. I guess I'm curious,
Mm.
what makes you passionate about working with men in therapy?
Um, I think so. Before I started my private practice, I was working for an organization, um, and one of their m- predominant services was a men's counselling service. So, like over the course of I think 8 years that I was there, I was working with men,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, throughout that experience, I got to work with such a diverse range of men, um, and I think got a really good sense of what it's like to be a man in this world now. Um, and the way that they experience the world and their own inner world and how they experience relationships as well. Um, I think that like men can be quite misunderstood. Um, and I think over time I just really developed a soft spot for them. I It was challenging at times, don't get me wrong, but I really enjoyed working with them as well. Um, It also, I guess, just felt like such an honor to be able to provide a space for them to talk about their vulnerabilities. And for a lot of the men that I had worked with, um, they had never opened up to anyone
Hmm,
before engaging with our services. So that was such a big thing to me to be able to provide space for them, to be able to open up and I guess like learn to feel safe in doing that.
that's beautiful.
Um, Yeah, I think most of my work with men now is with couples work. I only have
Hmm.
very few individual male clients. The rest
Oh,
are
okay.
in relationships who come to couples therapy.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I see
Yeah.
actually quite see quite a lot of individual male clients, and yeah, I agree with you. Like I think it's really fun, and I think for me personally, I've always kind of been attracted to having male friends. I don't know,
Hmm.
it feels like there's not as much judgment and it feels
Hmm.
more fun. And I've always been very curious because I think growing up, my my dad and my brother's always been a bit distant geographically and I think also
Hmm.
emotionally a little bit. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of piques my curiosity even more in working with them. And I think
Hmm.
it's really rewarding work, especially
Hmm.
when you see progress or you joke and laugh and you see them show up differently, starting to show up differently. And yeah, it's I really enjoy it.
Mm. It's interesting that you say that you have always preferred male friendships. I resonate with that. As a child, I much preferred spending time with the boys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just less
Um,
drama.
yeah, very much. It did feel more fun. It felt, I guess, less competitive.
Mm.
Um, when we're talking about this, actually, I just had this image of me playing soccer in grade 6 and the soccer ball just like smashed against my chest. I just had
Oh,
that image playing.
oh God, that's painful.
Yeah, it was. Um, I'm curious to know about your work with men now.
Mm.
Um, what are men coming to therapy for? What's your experience of that?
Mm. So I've had quite a lot of men around, I think millennials or Gen Zs. I think early 20s till mid or late 30s come to me. I think
Mm,
especially after a breakup of wanting to work on themselves, wanting to understand themselves better. even processing what led to the breakup, I do notice that they tend to have a lot of self-blame of, hey, like if I'd done this differently, it would have been different. I could have
Mm,
prevented this breakup. And so there's a lot of self-blame in that. So exploring
mm,
that. Um, yeah, it's really refreshing to see that men, especially younger ages, 20s and also 30s as well, wanting to like really work on themselves. And they kind of
mhm,
really value this work because they know that we can go really deep, we can explore ways that that's been hindering them from, say, communicating or taking accountability even. And so
mhm,
it's really deep work, but also
mhm,
very, very rewarding work.
mhm. It's refreshing, isn't it? Seeing more and more men to come to therapy as well. Like this generation of men have come so far.
100%. So proud of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes guts for someone to realize that perhaps I haven't been the best that I could be in a relationship. And I think,
Hmm.
for better or worse, breakups are always a catalyst for growth and always
Hmm.
an opportunity for, I think, just everyone, whether it's girls, guys, to realize, you know what, I actually could have communicated better or differently. Actually, I could have worked on my defensiveness, for example, because of this.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm really proud of where this whole mental health movement and for men and women is going.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think social media has its pros and cons,
Oh yeah.
um, because there's so much information out there
Mm,
now to make therapy and I guess talk about therapy more accessible to people. Something I've noticed with a lot of men and I think just people in general who come to therapy, um, who, sorry, Eunice,
that's okay.
someone, not going to name names, in my kitchen has got the blender on at the moment. It's so
That's fine. No worries. That's fine.
loud. So I've had quite a few people come in, men, actually, specifically men, who have shared with me that they've been learning about their attachment style and they're
Mm,
wanting to explore that. And a common theme is that they've tended to shut down or withdraw in their
mm,
romantic relationships. They've struggled to open up or communicate how they're feeling, what they're needing, and they're also curious about exploring their attachment history to make sense of, I guess, why they're showing up in relationships the way that they are now. Um,
yeah.
and and like you said, with the whole accountability thing as well, they're wondering what they could have done differently post. They come in post breakup and they're reflecting on a past relationship because it's sort of held up a mirror to them.
Mm.
What's your experience of that been?
Uh, a lot of guy clients sometimes would come to session and say, "Oh, I saw this thing on TikTok about daddy issues, and made me wonder and start thinking maybe I have daddy issues, and I want to start talking about it." Or
Mhm.
maybe, yeah. And I think like the attachment style and the whole new thing about love languages, like acts of service, physical touch,
Mm,
that's really helped a lot of people become aware of, oh, you know what, I actually prefer this. Um, prefer physical touch as love language, for example.
mhm,
And when I don't get that, and my client, my partners, for example, gives me acts of service instead, there's this mismatch, which is something I tend to talk about with my clients a lot, which is, oh, there may be a mismatch in the way that you guys show love and receive love, but that doesn't mean that they don't love you. No, and obviously they know that.
mm,
But I think it's more about exploring, like, okay, well, what would you prefer receiving and giving? And have you ever had a conversation with them before about what what their preferences are or what they're used to. So perhaps you
mhm,
guys can kind of come to the middle and recognize, hey, you know what? When he's giving you um, acts of service, that's actually his way of showing you love. But if you'd like more of, say, physical touch or words of affirmation, sometimes I tell my partner, hey, I need some comfort right now. Can you not like try to help
mhm,
me solve this? Just give me comfort and I will be okay. Literally just kiss me in the forehead and say
mm,
everything will be okay and I will be okay. And
mhm,
yeah, and he's like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And so it's been really interesting to start talking about these
Hmm.
things with them because I can tell that everyone's becoming more aware. But I
Hmm.
think the whole missing piece is also, okay, how do they come together? How do you not misinterpret each other in relationships? How do you
Hmm.
not assume that just because they do that or they don't do certain things, that means they don't care about you? And it's really
Hmm.
about having that clarity of, okay, just because they did that doesn't mean that they don't care. Maybe
Hmm.
they don't know how much it means to you to for them to greet you when you come home, for example. So it's
Hmm.
really in therapy, like going really deep is okay, how do we kind of untangle this miscommunication, or how do we not
Hmm.
jump to conclusion to assume someone else's intention when that's probably not what they're intending.
Hmm. Yeah, because assumptions can, yeah, like really be an issue because if you're left with assumptions and you're not actually talking through what you need, or you're not being clear about what you need, or you're not checking in with the other person, then
Mm.
there's a lot of space to make assumptions. I just wanted to also say that I think it's really beautiful how, um, like, you've asked your partner to care for and love you. And I think that's so important that I think a lot of people want their partners to anticipate what they need without having to say it. Like they should
Oh,
just know.
oh yeah.
And in fact, they don't. And I think that we do have a responsibility to be explicit about how we need to be cared for or how we need to be loved. And it's
Definitely.
yeah, it's funny because when you're talking about how you asked your partner to just sort of let you sit with your feelings, give you a kiss, it made me wonder like how many partners have had to say to their partner, yeah, like I just need you to validate me, or I don't need you to solve these feelings. I don't need you to solve anything. I just need you to sit with me, or I just need a hug. And and it sounds so simple enough. And usually partners are um they get that and they're like, oh, okay, that's it. Like that's all I need to do. Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I always joke around with my some of my clients of, when you get a girlfriend again, ask them, do you want solutions or do you want comfort?
Hmm.
We always laugh about that because I think yeah, it's actually so simple, but when you actually say it like that, okay, wow, yeah, you know what, I can do that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think the
Yeah.
worst thing is when you want comfort and someone tries to give you solutions or suggestions as to what you can do, and
Hmm.
then it kind of make you feel a bit invalidated, or oh, what I'm feeling
Hmm.
doesn't matter. And it's so
Yeah.
funny. Sometimes when I'm mad or annoyed about something, my partner is just looks at me and she's like, here she goes again. And then I would tell him, can you get mad with me? I need you to get mad. And then
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, that piece of shit, what a jerk. And I'm like, that sounds too fake. And then he's like, what do you want from me? I'm giving you what you want and telling me it's fake. And then we just end up laughing. But
You want me
yeah,
to be
it's
mad at you, mad with you, and then I get mad with you, but then it's too mad. What do you want?
so funny. Have you
Yeah.
do you have that? Like what's it like for you in that sense with your partner, if you don't mind
Yeah.
me asking?
What comes to mind first is this was a long, long time ago, probably in our first few years of dating. I was feeling really sad about something and I remember crying, and he said,
Mm,
don't cry. And I remember saying, I'm okay with crying. I'm okay with crying. It's fine. Like I'm okay to sit with the sadness, and it's fine for you to sit here with me in my sadness as well. I don't
mm,
really need you to make it go away.
nice.
Yeah, because I think that's what it is, right? When people try to give you unsolicited advice, or they come from a good place, they just want you to feel better, or they just want you to
Mm,
stop feeling sad. Which I guess when we think about for a lot of people in their upbringing and the way that their parents would respond to them when they had big feelings. A
yeah.
lot of the time, it could, while they might mean well because they want you to feel better, or they might try to distract you, like, hey, don't worry about that, stop crying, like, let's get an ice cream. It can be quite dismissive, and then it doesn't teach people to sit with their feelings and it's quite common to for people to approach someone sitting with difficult feelings
Mm,
by wanting to give advice or make them feel better to
yeah.
rid them of those feelings.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Because I think for men as well, and yeah, I don't want to generalize, but from what I've seen so
Mm.
far, a lot of them kind of operate the best when they can provide solutions to fix, to help,
Mm,
to solve. Like I think especially for um professions like law, medicine, engineering, software, I think yeah, in the industry like building in industry as
hmm
well. I think there's a lot of that stuff where hey, like don't cry, don't stress, just get it
hmm
done. And so it makes sense as to why they kind of think, oh, that's how I should
hmm
operate in relationships as well. But not to mention when they do that and focus too much on solutions and logic, they're actually missing the emotional connection part of it in the
hmm
relationship. And that can actually cause further disconnection between both parties, which is what we don't want. So
hmm
some things that I always do tell my guy clients is, look, I have no doubt that your logic and your solutions have gotten you to where you're at today. But at the
hmm
same time, sometimes in a relationship, that's how it can hinder connection because you're not
hmm
actually hearing them out or you're not actually connecting. And
hmm
so, don't be afraid of their emotions. Don't be afraid of your emotions. Make space for both of them because,
hmm
they're both valid. And yeah, like it's okay to feel pissed about this. I'm
hmm
pissed for you, but yeah, learn to be a bit more accepting of your emotions and your partners.
Mm, yeah. And it makes you think, right? How many men have heard that? How many men have heard someone say that to them to just kind of give them permission to sit with
Yeah,
their feelings, to sit with other people's feelings?
yeah,
Um, and I love how you framed it as well, that you normalized and validated their experience of fixing and problem solving, and
yeah.
sort of framing it in the way of like this has its place and it's been really useful and it's helped serve you and the people around you, but it also has its place. And
Mm,
sometimes in relationships, when it comes to your partner's emotional experience, the solution focused approach might not have its place at
mm,
times.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Um, I'm curious to know, I guess, like how much culture plays a role in this as well. If you notice any particular themes when working
Mm,
with men, and I guess like I'm thinking culture in terms of ethnicity, but also culture in terms of family culture.
mm,
What?
yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, I actually, yeah, well, I think we've kind of forgot to do an intro at the beginning. But
we
yeah,
did. We just
yeah,
launched straight into
yeah,
it.
too keen, too keen.
Yeah.
So I do work with a lot of Asian Australian clients, with whether it's
Mhm,
males or females, and I also do work with some Caucasian Australian males in their early 20s. So I think from a like culture definitely plays a big part of it, and it's a huge part of my passion and my specialty and of what I do. I think
mhm,
there's a lot of cultural barriers or limiting beliefs that hinder us and get in the way of us being the best version of ourselves, whether it's in work or relationships or in life.
mhm,
So, I think one very common cultural element that plays into it is this whole idea that, hey, in Asian culture, and I'm sure in other cultures as well, where men are not supposed to be weak. They're
mhm,
not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to say what they feel or to even just like what's the point in understanding how I feel if it's not going to get anything fixed or done. So there's always
mhm,
this element that comes into place of I shouldn't feel this way or I should step up and hold more and do more and provide more. So I think that's a really common thing that always comes up, which is okay, well, yes, like I understand that you do have to provide or that you do want to maintain this image of being strong. But at the same time, something that often comes back to bite us in the ass later is the more you suppress it and the more you keep it hidden and
mhm,
not talk about it, the more it's going to come up later. I have
mhm,
experienced that firsthand myself through painful
mhm,
experiences and life experiences in general. But
mhm,
I think the best way is sometimes to just confront it. And that's why, with my clients in sessions, I'm really about, okay, what's really the root cause? What's the deep, because when you show up with symptoms, say anxiety, depression, overwhelm, stress, or I don't know, just feeling down. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? Like it's from the
Mm-hmm.
environment of, okay, is it because you are often dismissed by your girlfriend, for example? Is it often because you're resenting your mom or your dad for not asking you how you are, or just
Mm-hmm.
having a more emotionally connected relationship where it's maybe it feels a bit more transactional, where hey, do this, do that, or hey, I need you to do this. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really about just bringing them back in of, okay, like let's talk about what's really happening, and what
Mm-hmm.
and also what do you think are the impacts of, say, how you viewed relationships or conflict or even communication in the family home, and how
Mm-hmm.
does that shape your perception of what love should be or what love shouldn't be at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's I really love this work. It's I think
Mm-hmm.
it's to the point where I was sick, I think a month ago, and when as soon as I got back into it and we started talking, I was just like, oh yeah, I've missed this. I've really missed it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I can see you just light up when you talk about it. Um, yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because, like you said, people come to therapy with these symptoms. And sometimes people are seeking tools or strategies to manage these symptoms. And that's
Mm,
only one very, very small part of the work. It's almost like
yeah,
if you only gave them that, you're sort of just giving them a band-aid because those strategies can only take you so far. Like being able to
exactly.
understand why you show up the way that you do, like what's happened in your life, what has been modeled to you, what relational
Mm,
experiences have you had growing up that have informed the way that you view yourself.
yeah,
Like that self-understanding is so important.
100%.
Mm,
And it's almost like if you just prescribe strategies and tools, yeah, I think I mean anyone can do that, but
mm,
also you need to understand, okay, they've tried this and it hasn't worked, why? Or they've kind of did this with the preconception or misunderstanding that it should have been like this instead, and then it's like, okay, well,
mhm,
what made you go about it in this way? Like some people think that, I don't know, confrontation is, I mean, yeah, a lot of people think confrontation is bad because it just has a really bad
mhm,
rep. It's like, I don't want to confront them, but it's more
mhm,
like, no, like confrontations, can be amicable, it can be
mhm,
calm and respectful and done really beautifully if if you can
mhm,
manipulate the use of language and how you phrase things. And
mhm,
so yeah, like there's a lot of misunderstandings around, oh, someone just told me to exercise, or someone just told me to
mhm,
meditate. Okay, like what else? Like, like
mhm,
what do you think you would have wanted to say to this person? Let's just say
mhm,
if they were receptive, if it was, and I think part a little bit, I do a little bit of like I think chair work,
mhm,
um. But I mean, because most of my work is online, it's a bit difficult to actually have chairs for
mhm,
clients to speak to that person. But sometimes I would just get them to go, look, if they were in the room right now, what would you want to say to them unfiltered? And then let's kind
mhm.
of polish it and tweak it so that it's presentable and well articulated. And so they could just let them get it out of what they want to say. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I was really pissed at you when you did that, just, and then, yeah, I think like, and then we kind of
Mhm,
tweak it of, okay, why don't, like, I'll sort of get them to, okay, what would you want to say to them in a more calm way? And then they kind of
mhm,
try to go about it. And then I kind of prompt them, okay, maybe you can tweak
mhm.
this a little bit, or maybe you can change and put this sentence here so it doesn't get
Yeah.
them so defensive at the beginning.
Yeah,
And
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's fun.
So if I'm hearing you right, that part of the exercise, what you start off with is just giving them the space to express how they're feeling, however they need to, just get it out of
Mm,
their system. And then you start to kind of fine tune it so that they start to consider more how they might want those words to land for the other person.
yeah, especially
Yeah.
if we're talking about, oh, I need to like we need to have a difficult conversation with a partner or a parent or a friend or a colleague or whoever.
Hmm.
It's transferable skills to anyone really. And
Hmm.
then it's about, okay, think about the objective. What do you want them to understand? What do you want them to take away? We
Hmm.
obviously can't control whether they're going to be receptive or accept it, but at least we can try to think about, okay, I want them to understand that I was actually really feeling hurt by the things that they said, for example. And
Mm.
then, okay, great. So how would you like to approach first? What's the first thing you'd say? And then kind of working your way to, okay, like, I felt this way when you did this, I actually felt this way. And then kind of changing it to more coupley therapy of, hey, I noticed this, so that it's not just you did this.
Hmm.
And yeah, I would also encourage them to write it down just because when it comes to difficult conversation, if you don't plan it or at least have an idea, it could go down really bad. It could go down really bad. So yeah, I would encourage them to do that.
Yeah, so that they really think through how they're sharing, how they're feeling as well. Because I think, in my experience, when like many people that I've worked with in therapy, they they believe that they have expressed their needs very explicitly, very clearly, and then when they share with me how they did that, often I'm like, I'm on the receiving end of that, and I'm not picking up
Yeah,
how you're feeling or what you need.
yeah.
It's more sounding like criticism
Do you
or
have an example of that?
blame. Oh, not that I can think of fast enough. If I
Mm,
take my time and think about it, I might
mm,
come up with something, but I'm very conscious that you'll just be sitting there waiting
mm,
while I'm thinking.
mm.
Do
Okay.
you have an example? Like, have you come across that? Because you were nodding when I was talking about it.
Uh, yeah, let me think.
Hmm. Maybe we'll both just think for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
I can share a general example, but it's not very specific.
Yeah.
But it's probably what happens a lot in relationships. Um, so, so I'm going to think about couples. Um,
Mm,
so there might have been a really tense conversation, and then later on, the couple come back together after that tense interaction, and one of them attempts to repair, but the
mm.
repair attempt sounds like, "Do you realize that you were being really hostile to me before? I want you to realize." So
Oh
it sounds a
shit.
bit like that, which, I guess if you're on the receiving end of that, you can only imagine
That's putting
how someone
fire. Yeah, that's putting. Wait, what's this? What's the saying? That's putting fire
adding
to.
fuel to the fire.
Yeah,
Yeah, putting the fire to the fire,
yeah,
throwing the wood in the fire.
that's putting that's putting fuel to the anger, man. Okay, and then what happened next?
Well, it didn't go down well. So I'm just going to say that I'm sort of putting together different stories so that I don't breach confidentiality by speaking specifically about one
Mm,
couple. But
mm,
that's just sort of like a general example of how a couple might try and,
mm,
or one person might try and repair. So I think kudos to them that they attempt to repair. They don't just leave it festering. But
mm,
like obviously that type of communication, I think when you come in with communication that sounds like you did this, do you realize that you did this? I don't think you understand, then it can sound very accusatory.
yeah,
And then the other person will respond obviously defensively because they're feeling criticized. And then it
exactly.
just gets like stuck. They don't really get anywhere. And one person isn't feeling heard. They are thinking, I've expressed myself, I've tried to work through things, I've tried to be really clear about what I need or how I'm feeling. But that person just doesn't seem to care. They're just being defensive. But there's a bit of a pattern that's playing out. Um, yeah, I wonder what it's like for you working with men on their communication. Um, do you
Mm,
like have a framework, or are there particular therapeutic modalities that you draw from that help
mm.
with this kind of work?
I don't know what kind of modality that would constitute, but I would get them to tell me like the whole story and walk me through what exactly happened, and ideally like the dialogues. Like I always get them to like take notes of fights, conflicts you have, and write them down as raw as you can, so we can bring it in and talk about it.
Hmm.
So sometimes, say if they start telling me the dialogue, and then maybe something really significant comes up, like I might then sorry like go sorry to interrupt, but can I just kind of ask you a little bit about that. Or
Mhm.
after they tell me, then I go, okay, you probably shouldn't have said that because that actually made them really pissed. So like I'm I'm lucky and privileged enough that I kind of have that relationship with my male clients where, hey, you shouldn't have done that.
Mhm.
Like that was not ideal. And then we kind of maybe have a little bit of laugh and then we kind of go, okay, look, I get where you're coming from, and I think I know where like what you want to sort of articulate. So here's a way how we can do it. So
Mhm.
instead of going, you did this, or why did you do that, maybe sort of start with, hey, like I'm noticing that when you do that, it actually really hurts me. So using a bit more neutral language of going like the you statements instead of wait, sorry,
Mhm.
with I statements instead of you, so that they're
Mhm.
not as defensive. And I really stress on this point, like, look, the point of this communication thing is you don't want them to be defensive. You want them to be receptive. Think
Mhm.
about it this way. If and then I do this like role play thing where it's like, if I told you, hey, I don't know, Bob, let's just say Bob. Hey, Bob, you did this and I really don't like it. Versus, hey, Bob, I'm noticing that, when you do that, I actually feel really hurt. Which one would you prefer? And then they'd obviously always tell me the second one. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. You're doing this Bob thing to your mom or your girlfriend, and no wonder she's not hearing you. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh. And then so we kind of work our way towards, okay, let's add this or let's say
Mhm.
this to make them not defensive first.
Mhm.
And then you can kind of go, okay, state what you've observed, what you're noticing, what you're feeling. And then maybe you can go, let me know what your thoughts are. I would love to know, what your perspective is. So ask them for their perspective. So it's an
Mhm.
open-ended conversation. You're inviting them to have their input. And it's not just, you did this, you screwed up, it's your fault. Um,
Mhm.
and then they'll go like, okay, cool. So I think that usually I mean, that's
Mhm.
how I approach my conflicts as well. So
Mhm.
for them, like I think it's just really it's more productive to have that set structure to
Mhm.
go with when it comes to communicating
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit more about the I statement sort of
Mm,
structure,
of course.
especially for people listening who might not know exactly what it is that you're talking about?
Mm.
How can you tell me a bit more about the structure in terms of like how do you introduce it and how do you talk your client through using the I statements? Maybe
Mm,
if you have an example.
I think it would probably be along the lines of what I told you just now. So like in a very conversational way that relates back to what they're saying.
Mhm.
So say like, yeah, no, dude, like don't say you did this, don't go like that. Maybe
Mhm.
kind of go like this. And because sometimes and like that role play thing that I told them, like, hey, would you prefer this or this? And then they kind of get the point, like, oh, okay. And then
Mhm.
it's really good because they kind of have that realization of, oh, I didn't know me saying that comes across this way and gets them to be more defensive. And usually when I do
Mm.
that, which one would you prefer? Then they almost always get it.
Mhm.
So I don't go into like a lot of theory, but I kind of just go, look, it's better to say what your experience is than to accuse or assume or to state that, hey,
Mhm.
you screwed up this way, because
Mhm.
then they're not going to go on the defense. If someone said
Mhm.
that to you right now, you would be defensive, and you probably not want to continue talking to me if I said this to you. So
Mhm.
in that way, so that they can kind of understand.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I think the comparison really helps when you share an example like what would it, how does it land for you if I say it this way versus how do I say it this way? One way sounds more accusatory. It starts with like, you did this. And then the other one, I guess you're turning more inward and you're sharing your own experience of what happened between you and the other person. I found that to be really useful as well in my work, just
Yeah.
sharing the contrast and seeing how that lands for them so they can feel it when they hear the words land for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't mind sharing my own personal examples of my partner or
Mhm.
my parents so that to make a point and to help them
Mm.
understand more. Um, yeah, and I think they pretty much they really appreciate it when I do bring in personal
Mm.
examples because then
Mhm.
I don't know, it's like a point of connection, I suppose.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it would help you build rapport, trust, but also normalizes these experiences for them.
Exactly.
And especially, I guess, generally speaking, not all men, but a lot of men do find it hard to open up with other men.
Mm,
Um, Over the last decade in my work with men, there have been so many occasions where I ask about their support systems, who they might share what they're sharing with me, with other people,
mm,
and they would normally say they wouldn't talk about these things with their friends. So when you share your own experiences or you normalize their experiences, it's probably really meaningful for them because it's not
yeah,
often that they'll have these conversations with their male friends and they're not going to know what their male friends are experiencing. So,
yeah. Yeah. And I think
mm,
there's almost that danger of when you do share with your friends, either they kind of enable you with good intentions in that way of, oh, yeah, screw her, or they
mhm,
give you like kind of, I don't know, advice that's more aligned with them instead of like the
mhm,
client or you. So yeah, like I can see that.
mhm, yeah. Um, hmm. I had a question before, but I need to refer back to my notes.
Sure,
Give me one sec.
sure. Just while you're looking for that, I think I do want to share this one thing where I think one of the biggest
Yeah.
things I love about working with men is when they share their wins. Um, I I encourage them to share their wins because I
Mhm,
always tell them, look, that's the thing that maintains the momentum that kind of gives you that feeling where you are changing and progressing. Because I know
mhm,
that a lot of them like to feel, oh, what's the outcome here? How long do I have to stay in therapy? It's a very left brain, very like, oh, logical side of
mhm,
things. And so when they tell me like, oh, I called out my mom or I called out my friend, I called out my girlfriend, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, keep
mhm.
telling me these wins because that's what helps you. And oh my God, best feeling ever when you kind of
Yeah.
can tell that they've like experienced that change and they are
Mhm.
starting to believe in themselves. Oh, best feeling ever.
Yeah, it's so rewarding for them and for you as their therapist as well to see their growth. And I
Mm,
think it's so important that you highlighted that. Then in therapy, we also talk about the wins and we also celebrate them with our clients. I think
always.
a lot of people can perceive therapy as this very problems focused
Yeah,
process. So I think spending the time to focus on the wins is so important. And also helps you to track where you're going in therapy and
yeah,
have, I guess, something to like that feels tangible. Yeah.
100%.
Especially with people that are coming into therapy and a few sessions in, they might be like, so what are we doing here? What are we working towards? How do I know when I'm done?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's actually just brought up another point that I want to
Yeah.
quickly share if that's okay.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
I think sometimes from my observation so far, sometimes it's really valuable if men in therapy can kind of learn that skill of elaborating on a point. So I'll bring in
Mhm.
an example from a really popular game and show adaptation called Last of
Yeah.
Us. I'm a huge gamer fan, and I'm currently watching the second season that's out, so no spoilers. But
Mhm.
essentially, the show focuses on Joel, a male character, and Ellie, the girl character, where she's
Mhm.
immune, and Joel brings her to all half away across the country to make a cure because she's immune.
Mhm.
And I think in the second season, we find out that they're estranged and that Ellie is angry at Joel because he took that choice from her. But
Mhm.
the problem is, he never really, so this example is, he never really elaborated on why he did what he did. So, what he did essentially for people who have watched or haven't watched, I'm sorry, is he saves her and doesn't like, and he ended up killing everyone at the
Mhm.
Fireflies hospital because he's grown really attached to her. Ellie's become this daughter figure for him. And
Mhm.
when Ellie eventually does find out that that was the truth because he had to
Mhm.
lie to her, she was really mad. But I think the point that he could have elaborated on is, look, I saved you and I did what I did because I love you. I don't want to lose you.
Mhm.
You've become family to me and I don't want to lose you and that's why I did what
Mhm.
I did. And I'm sorry that that hurts you and it took the choice away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that was just something that I thought of today while preparing for this chat, because I think
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to elaborate on your intentions, whether harm or no harm has been done, I think it just really helps the other person to know what you're like, where you're coming from, and when they know why you did what you did,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take away the pain, sure. It doesn't may not take away the anger, but I think it really helps them understand and maybe even do like if I was Ellie and my father figure person told me that he saved me because he didn't want to lose me. I think that would
Mm-hmm.
be something that could ease my anger. And, I would want to hug him, like
Mm-hmm.
if you had to kill people to protect one person that you love, I think it's a very controversial question, and there's a lot of moral high grounds and standards here, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that point, like if you elaborate more, it could really go a
Mm-hmm.
long way in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of making my point, but I think, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think that is so important, the elaboration.
Mm-hmm. The elaboration, the opening up, the sharing your underbelly in a way.
Yeah.
I want to come back to this, but I also had a question just to clarify what you're saying. What was her understanding of why he killed everybody else? What did she did he explain why at all before she found out the actual
He,
reason?
hmm. So he lied to her saying, "Oh, your immunity meant nothing. There were a lot of other people that were immune just like you, and it doesn't help making a cure, so they've given up." But
Mm-hmm.
he didn't tell her that he actually killed everyone in the hospital
Right.
because they wanted to just operate on her without her consent to make a cure for humankind from the zombie
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse. And yeah, that's what he said. And
Mm-hmm.
then when she found out, she obviously was very angry. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think it shows years later when they have a conversation where she tries to forgive him. He said it in his only very mad way of, if God gave me another chance, I would do it all over again. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of his way of saying, I love you. And I wouldn't hesitate for a second to save you if it
Mm-hmm.
means I can keep you in my life.
Oh, this brings up like so many thoughts and questions. I feel like we could probably spend another hour talking about this. But
Mm,
the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, thank you for sharing that as well. Um, the first thing that came to my mind was about how men are taught to love.
mm,
And one of the ways that they were taught to love is by providing.
yeah.
And I'm curious to hear about your experience working with men, or even with people of different sexes. If this has come up in conversations about their romantic relationships, not even romantic, all types of relationships, about how men show up in relationships and how they love. Um,
Mm,
and they may not explicitly share with you that they care for you, that they love you, that they want to be there for you, but it
yeah.
shows in many other ways. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good question. That's actually recently
mm,
come up in session. Yeah, I think especially for a lot of Asian cultures, emotions aren't really talked about or expressed.
mhm,
Love's not really expressed. We don't say things like, some people don't say things like, I love you, I'm proud of you. And I think some men are, mm, a, are conditioned almost to think, I'm providing for the family. That's my love language. I'm
mhm,
bringing food to the table. I'm buying these things and I'm giving them a good life. That's how I show love. But I think
mhm,
the key missing part that a lot of millennial adult children now are facing is, I don't know this person. That's my dad. I don't really have much of a relationship with him
mm,
because he's always worked. He's always, busy working and come home late at night, and we don't really talk. He doesn't ask me how
mhm,
I'm feeling. And why should I be the person to initiate and to start having a relationship with him if he hasn't shown interest in doing that? So there's a
mhm,
lot of, I think, anger, resentment, confusion. Yeah, a lot of anger and resentment of,
mm,
how am I supposed to have a relationship with my dad if he doesn't try? But actually,
mhm,
the big thing that I talk to with my clients about is we have to make that first step because they don't know how to.
Mm,
They don't know what that looks like. They may not have the capacity or the confidence to do so. They may they may want to, but they don't know how
mm,
to. And that
mhm,
barrier stops them from trying. But if we're
mhm,
able to be a bit brave and actually take that first step of trying to initiate, of trying to start and start small as well, like, oh,
mhm,
maybe he likes this beef noodle and then buy him that, or just say, hey, do you want to go grab takeaway? Just really baby steps of little points of connection. It goes a
mhm,
long way. But I think first, before my clients are able to do that as guys and as male clients, sons, is that they first have to talk through the resentment and the anger
mm,
and hey, like, why didn't he do this? When was the last time that he spent time with me? And I think
mhm,
that's what I'm hoping to change with my clients and with
mhm,
my work, which is helping guys now of this generation and the next to realize, hey, you know what, being a dad, yes, you do have to provide, it's important, but also the emotional connection is paramount.
mhm,
There's nothing more important than that love that
mhm,
you can give them and the love that they feel. That's actually what
mhm,
makes them want to
mhm,
get close to you and come to you with their issues. So
mhm,
yes, acts of service is important, but don't forget physical touch and words of affirmation and just time, the time you spend with them. It's
mhm,
yeah, I wish my dad was able to do that. And you know, yeah, it's it's a very personal topic and it's something that
mhm.
I'm working towards with my clients and my
Yeah,
work.
yeah. Um, I'm sort of wondering, like, where do I go with this? Because I have so many questions popping up. Like, I'm curious to hear a bit more about your personal experience, if you're happy to share. I'm
Yeah.
also, you know, would love to hear more about your client work as well. But just the topic of like how men are taught to show up and how a lot of men now are wanting to show up in their relationships or as a family man differently.
Mm,
And they're already doing it differently, but they're they didn't have much of a blueprint around how to emotionally attune to
yeah.
their partners and to their children. They didn't have that role modeling. So I think it's wonderful then they come to therapy wanting to explore that.
Yeah.
Um, and also, as a result of wanting to do that, wanting to show up differently as a family man, they're also having to confront their own family of origin stuff, which, as you said, it brings up a lot of anger, resentment towards their parents. But yeah, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your own experience around, I guess, how you're navigating
Mm,
that adult relationship with your father.
mm. I think I'm lucky because I think I almost always have a close-ish relationship with him, even though we've always been separated by distance geographically.
Mhm,
So I remember my youngest memories are he'd always make jokes with me. Whenever we see a dog on the streets, we pet them for as early and as long as I can remember. But then when I was in high school, I think there were a lot of exams. He's very academic driven, so a lot of exams, pressure to perform well, to get, just get good grades.
mhm,
So I think for that period of time, I didn't really like him because
mhm,
he'd enrolled me into all these tutoring, and I now understand and appreciate that what he did for me because I needed that.
mhm,
Um, and I think it was until I got into uni where our relationship finally it started to improve because there wasn't that pressure of grades anymore. Uni was just I was doing psychology, I was doing what I always knew I wanted to do and love. So
mhm,
he didn't really have to like push me as hard of hey, you need to do your math, you need to yeah.
mhm,
And but it's still I think he's moved long story short, he's moved back to Sydney for retirement last year
mhm,
and living with getting to live to see him on a more regular basis, weekly, a few times a week, started to make me realize that he's actually a very avoidant person.
mhm,
He doesn't really approach problems head on unless he needs to, or unless there's a financial cost, or
mhm,
unless it's absolutely necessary. And I think there are times where I try to talk to him about it, but he just doesn't say anything. Like he will just laugh it off, smile it off. And
mhm,
I used to think that, oh, I think my dad has really high EQ. Like he doesn't let anything bother him. But I think
Mm.
It's not really high EQ. It's more, I think it's more just,
Avoidance.
yeah, avoidance. And if it doesn't bother
Yeah.
me or my income or my survival, then it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wish I can help him realize, hey, you can make a choice. Hey, you can have an opinion. Hey, when we're at a restaurant, choose what you want to eat. But he'd always say, just pick for me. Like,
Mm.
so I think I've started to learn to accept him for how he is showing up, but also there are times and moments where I won't be afraid to nudge him and say, "Hey, you can choose here. Hey, you just, do you prefer chicken or beef? Just tell me what a protein and I'll help you choose." Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wish that he's able to have more autonomy, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
also difficult given everything he's gone through. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
he's done very well as a father and earning and providing, but
Mm.
yeah, sometimes
Oh, that's so
a bit
nice.
stubborn. Yeah.
Mm. Um, it's interesting, like what I'm picking up on is the role that you play for him now as an adult child,
Mm,
um, in like helping to cultivate his autonomy by reassuring him that he can have choice.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I just have to accept that he doesn't want to. And sometimes
Mm,
like his birthday was in Jan and I got him two tops because he always wears like button ups, long sleeve. And he's like, just return one. And I'm like, no, Dad, just accept my love and take it, please. And he's like, okay, okay. And then I got him AirPods because yeah, I got him AirPods and he's been using it every day. And it's really
mm,
good to see him finally using something that I gave him and actually
mm.
enjoy it. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's almost like he's a kid again, but it's
Hmm.
sweet.
Yeah. And it's nice that he was able to receive the gifts because then you got to experience the gift of giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there are so many threads of conversations that we've opened up here that I would love to explore more with
Mm.
you. Not that we have the time,
Maybe we can do a
but
part two down the line.
yeah, part two, three, four, five. Just keep talking. Yeah. Yeah, I'm especially curious to talk a bit more about um, how men show love, um, and I guess what's been instilled in them from
Mm.
throughout history in terms of like I think even culturally speaking, and I know this is a generalization, so I say it kind of lightly, but um, in terms of like showing up as loyal, as a provider, dependable, um,
Mm.
I've come across a lot of men who post separation, when they explore this, they genuinely feel like they did such a wonderful job as a partner that they did everything that they were
Mm.
meant to do or taught to do.
Mm.
Um, and then it just sort of is sort of dumbfounding for them how then they get to that end point of the relationship because they're like, I've done everything that I thought I was meant to do or that I was taught to do. Like, where did we go
Mm.
wrong?
Mm.
Um, so I think, yeah, when it comes to men and how they express themselves and how they love or how they don't show up for their partners, they can be very misunderstood.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. Just a quick, short, think story there.
Yeah.
There was one time I had a recent argument with my partner, and I had to probe a lot to get him to share what his actual fear and concern was. And
Mm,
it just baffled me because I'm like, wow, I didn't know it was that deep. I didn't know, I had no idea, what you're assuming of me was actually something that deep.
mm,
And so it just made me realize, okay, like, look, I want you, like I was telling him after that conflict and when we were trying to repair and trying to talk it through a little bit, like, hey, look, I want you to feel like you can share these things with me. Like no matter how dumb you think it is, how stupid you think it is, or how deep it could be and it is, like you
hmm,
can tell me these things because just like you, I have my own concerns and fears and traumas and insecurities. And
hmm,
you can tell me these things and we can, talk about it and work on it together. And like when I approach him to have these conversations, he's almost like, oh, here we go, like as a joke. But it's like, and I'm like, no, like, come on, be serious. But like, yeah, I was just really want him and like other men in therapy or not to know that, look, if you have these things, you can tell us. And
Mhm.
just like, just as we have issues and we come to you, that you can come to us as well.
Yeah. And I think therapy is one of those spaces where they can like start to learn to do that in an environment that feels very safe. Um, because I don't know if you find this as well, but more often than not, the way that men open up and express themselves to us as their therapist is very different to how they would open up to their partner. I think for a
Hmm.
lot of men, like they could not imagine saying some of the things that they say to us to their partners. And then our work is really to help them find the courage to be able to then turn to their partner and lean toward them to ask for what they need.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I love it. It's like such a privilege and honor for them to be a bit more unfiltered. And
Hmm.
yeah, and it's like working up, helping them build their confidence in the toolkit to be able to tell them their
Hmm.
partners and not always be so afraid of their reactions or how they're going to react, because they're going to react how they're going to react.
Hmm.
And I actually realized that in my partner as well. I think I kind of became aware of how afraid he was of how upset I could be or would be if he were to tell me
Hmm.
something, certain things. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, look, that's my emotions. That's for me to handle. That's not on you.
Hmm.
You can tell me how you feel without being afraid of how I would feel. Like I'm more
Hmm.
evolved. I'm more evolved now. I'm more regulated than who I was a few years ago.
Hmm.
So I hope you can understand that. He's like,
Hmm.
okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much saying, look, I'm responsible for my feelings and you're not
Mm,
responsible. And I can sit with whatever is going to come up for me. You don't need to fix that. And I think they probably really need to hear that. Like if they're going to take that courageous step to open up more and share with us, as
mm,
partners, I guess we also need to be open and probably provide that positive reinforcement
yeah,
around like how grateful you are and how open you are to hearing what they have to share, because it
yeah,
can probably feel a bit scary.
100%. That's why I had to validate the shit out of him. I was like, thank you for telling
Mm.
me that. Like, I know it's really uncomfortable. And he's like, stop being a therapist right now. I'm like, no, I mean it. Like, I'm genuinely grateful that we're able to talk like this. And I know it's really
Yeah.
weird and awkward, but thank you. I love you.
Stop therapizing me, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Has your partner ever said that to you?
In his own way, yes, definitely. And my daughter will probably be saying it to me as well.
Really? Oh, that's
Not
sweet.
yet. She's 4.5, but I'm sure it will get there one day where she might just be like, Mom, I just want you to be angry with me.
Oh, can you think about how cool that would be? That's like a whole new level of maturity.
Yeah.
Hmm, love that.
Yeah. I've got my cat really wanting to come into the office right now.
Oh, it's been a wonderful
Um,
chat. Thank you.
yeah, likewise. Thank you for making the time to chat with me and for sharing all your experiences and insight. Um, Before we finish up, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What would you like to share with men who are considering engaging in therapy?
Good question.
Or what would you like them to know?
I want them to know that they're they're not alone, and whatever they want to talk about, or they're whatever they're afraid of might sound stupid, isn't stupid. And if and whenever they're ready, yeah, I would love to chat with them more. And I'm a therapist and I'm someone who really values the connection. So I'm not going to push them to tell me anything they're not ready to, and really take time to build that relationship and connection to make sure they feel comfortable. But yeah, when they are ready, they can come to us and talk to us, and I think we would do some excellent work together.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So Eunice is psychotherapist.